Most leaders believe that they are creating safe and healthy environments until people stop speaking honestly, innovation slows and tension quietly eats the room. So the question comes is, dear listeners, like, what if progress is not about being blocked by the strategy or the tools, but by the stories that we tell ourselves and the values that we fail to live consistently, right? Today, dear listeners, we are stepping into an uncomfortable but very essential truths behind the leadership, integrity, and the real growth.
Mhm.
So, hey, dear listeners, welcome back to another powerful episodes of Mind Meets Machine, where we explore how human behavior, yes, you heard that correct, how human behavior, leadership, and the modern systems intersect, especially when, or I would say, where things quietly break down. And today I'm joined by a lovely guest. Please welcome Myleena Sutton. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here on the show and to speak with your audience.
That's really great. I'm really happy that you joined us today. And dear listeners, before we delve deep into our discussion today, I'll quickly love to introduce you with Myleena. So Myleena is the leadership consultant, growth coach, and the storyteller. Often she's known as the leadership fanatic. So she helps leaders and individuals confront the hard conversations that they have been avoiding, like working at the intersection of accountability, psychological safety, and the human behavior. So she's also the creator of the Leadership Drives, which is a podcast which is born from her solo road trips across 24 states to uncover the personal stories behind how people lead. And in this conversation, dear listeners, we will explore how leaders unintentionally, yes, unintentionally shape the trust, why conflict is really about the surface issue, and why personal fidelity maybe the missing ingredient in both happiness and the sustainable success. So, I'll not take much of your time. Let's get started. Welcome to the show again, Myleena.
Indeed. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to our conversation. I think this is going to be fun.
Yeah, exactly, definitely. And just to kind of break the ice, before we get into the main discussion, the behaviors, frameworks, I have some curiosity, right? So I'm very curious about what first showed you that real progress usually stalls, not because the people don't know what to do, but because they are avoiding something deeper.
Well, first, let me say this. I tend to use as a my kind of tagline, all leadership is personal.
Okay.
And the reason I use that is because I think who we are at work is also who we are at home. The only difference is we're concerned about different consequences in the different spaces. So, to answer your question, there were a couple of things that made me go, you know what? What's on the surface is not really the issue. So, personally, if I can just be a bit personal. So, I grew up with my grandparents. My grandmother passed away, and my mother and I have I'm going to say it just kind of a rocky relationship sometimes. And one day we started a conversation about something and we got into an argument. I had a meltdown. And when I say a meltdown, I got so mad and I started just kind of spouting off. At one point, I was just yelling. I don't even know what I was yelling about at one point. And what we were talking about really wasn't the essence of what I was angry about. And what started the actual explosion is that she was talking about issue A. And my thought was, whatever issue A is, I don't really care about that. Issue B is what's really bugging me, but I can't seem to be heard when I talk about issue B. You don't understand how important issue B is to me. You want to ignore it and focus on issue A. And until I get B addressed, I don't care about A and I don't want to pretend like I care about A. But every time we talk, you bring up issue A. And
Mm,
I think no matter what setting we're in, all too often, the thing that's really important to us is somehow being threatened or neglected. And what we do is people Frankly, until that thing is going to be treated the way we think it should be, accorded the kind of respect we think it should have, we don't fully engage. And therefore, we can't really deal with what's really going on. That's just, again, whether we're at home or at work, that is the situation that we're
Yeah.
often confronting.
Exactly, I totally agree. And to also get into the discussion is like that distinction matters so much because why I'm saying this, like a lot of leaders, right? A lot of leaders believe that the psychological safety is only about being nice, agreeable, or avoiding kind of avoiding the discomfort also. Here's what you think. I mean, what's the most common misunderstanding that you see around how leaders actually create or quietly destroy the psychological safety?
Things. I think first and foremost, one of the things that leaders
Hmm.
perhaps should accept is that it is their job to create the safety. It is not necessarily something that you do mutually or jointly with the employees.
Hmm.
It is your job because of the power construct. You can't expect somebody who reports to you or who is lower than you within the organizational hierarchy to take that responsibility or to take the lead for safety. It is up to you to recognize that it needs to be created because you
Hmm.
set the parameters, you determine how it's going to unfold. So the first thing is just simply recognizing that it matters. The second thing, beyond realizing that the psychological safety component matters, is making sure that we create a consistent, predictable environment for people. If I can talk to you today about a problem and you respond one way, and then tomorrow your behavior is completely different, and if there's a disconnect between what you said and your body language, I don't get the safety that I need to have the assurance to take initiative to express concern or even disagreement. So often, where leaders, I think, sometimes go awry is first not realizing that psychological safety matters and it is up to them, and then looking at how predictability is key to having psychological safety. It's not about being nice, it's about knowing what to expect so you can make the decisions that you need to make about how you're going to behave in a particular context or whether you even
Yeah,
want to be in that organization. It is predictability that matters.
very true. And that safety is not about the softness part, it's the consistency. Because, like, people don't need leaders to be perfect, but they need them to be predictable in their
Yes.
values, right?
As a matter of fact, I shared with someone the other day. She was
Mm.
asking whether or not she should give notice on her job. She was preparing to quit. And this is an example of how important predictability is.
Mm.
Um, and I was like, why are we having this conversation? What's going on with you that you are even asking about this? And she said, well, I want to give notice because I've been taught that that is what it needs to be professional. But every time someone gives notice here, they get fired on the day that they give notice. With all due respect, to make that environment safe, why not simply tell your people that? Look, when you give notice, we generally will do what we have to do. We'll pay you out of your notice period and we cut ties that day. But a lot of times we don't give people that predictability.
Yeah,
And in turn, it destroys the culture because people will figure out what they need to figure out.
correct. Exactly. So, um, I mean, what safety erodes? Like, it often happens subtly, right? By like, what kind of blind spots or the internal contradictions do leaders tend to miss about their own behavior? What do you think?
In terms of the things that leaders miss about their own behavior, I don't know if you ever watched Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
There's this one dinosaur type called the velociraptors, and they're constantly watching and observing. Employees are like velociraptors. They're always
Okay.
studying the people that they work with. And I think
Yeah.
first and foremost, the leader has to recognize that the employees are watching them to, again, see what they do consistently. Consistency is key. Oftentimes leaders don't realize when they frankly treat employees differently. They don't
Mm.
realize sometimes when there are disconnects between what they value in the sense of, I can tell what's important to her because she will follow up. She will ask questions. I can tell what's not important because she will say okay, but there will be no resources put behind it. There'll never be any time to do it. I can tell if it matters who she assigns to work on the project or he doesn't give the flexibility to get it done. So I would say with leaders, that sense of self awareness is key. As a
Yeah.
matter of fact, If you look at what we look at as the cornerstones of emotional intelligence, self awareness comes first, right behind self control. And a lot of leaders simply don't do that work. To give you an example, last few weeks ago, I did an engagement with a team that is stuck in recurrent conflict. And every member on that team talked about how the leader has a friend on the team. And this is every team member. And they said, look, all of us are held to this one particular standard, except this one person. When I talked to the leader about it, the leader didn't see that at all. And she thought these people are simply in many ways, maybe making this up. They're misunderstanding this. But what you got to realize, if they perceive it that way, then it is up to you to figure out as a leader, how do you change that perception? Because part of what you're dealing with is reality. And what you also have to realize, you are never just one of the people on the team. You always have that power construct that you have to control for. So looking at your behavior, looking at how people perceive things, and then thinking about how power impacts their willingness to speak openly and honestly, and how that power will affect what they see when they're observing you.
Important, yeah. And I mean, what stands out is how kind of internal misalignment quietly leaks outward. So teams often feel kind of the disconnect, right? The long before leaders are willing to name it.
Yes,
Is it correct, right?
absolutely. The team members, they will see it. And what happens? They will start to look for affirmation
Uh,
amongst themselves. Have you noticed that he does this? Do you notice that he or she or
mhm.
they do that? Because they're looking for someone to say, no, you're not crazy. Even
Yeah,
if there's an alternative explanation, people are always scanning the environment for what do things mean so that they can adjust their behavior accordingly. And as a leader, you have to just be keenly aware that that scrutiny is always there. And because you hold the power, being attuned to it is your job. You have to do it. Even if you think it's a time consuming, energy consuming chore, you have to do it because it shows up in people's willingness to engage and to participate, and not only how they treat one another, but how they manage their relationships with you.
that's very important. Yeah. And also, like, you teach the idea of personal fidelity, like living your values consistently. So I'm also curious about it, like how that shows up practically. Like, what does alignment actually look like in the daily decisions and not just the kind of intentions?
First and foremost, you have to be clear about what those values are. And I would even go so far as to say you might want to make a practice of having 2 to 3 core values. If you have a laundry list of values, it's kind of hard to live by a really long list of things. But if you choose the 2 to 3 guiding principles that you're going to build your team by, build your work ethic by, looking at every aspect of how you lead to figure out how is it that you might be contradicting what it is that you say is important to you. So to give you an example, one of the things that is really important to me, I believe in addressing conflict and I like to do it quickly because I don't necessarily like when things fester because I know what I'm like when I feel as if there's been a problem that's looming for a really long time and how it becomes easier to simply kind of change my orientation in terms of how I behave to avoid dealing with it. So even if it makes me really uncomfortable, I am going to reach out to have a conversation to let you know this is something I need to talk about. As a matter of fact, because I'm not an employee, because I'm a consultant, there was a client where their main employee that I had to interface with, I just noticed that her behavior toward me sometimes seemed a little, for lack of a better way, I'm just going to say funky. I'm like, I
Okay.
don't know what her problem is, but I don't know what it is that I've done. So after a while, I just noticed consistently this behavior is happening. I wouldn't say confronted her because I don't like the connotation of that word. But what I decided to do one day, I went to deliver a workshop because it was an organization where I was facilitating workshops for them. I know she got to the office early because I pay attention too. So I'm like, look, let me get here so that no one else is around because I want to think about what would make it safe for her to be human in her response rather than feeling like she needs to defend herself. And so I go in and I'm like, hey, Lord, these are the challenges or the issues, the things that I've seen in terms of how we interact. And they make me uncomfortable. And I'm wondering if there's something that I've done that makes you treat me this way because it makes me uncomfortable and I don't like it. I didn't soft pedal what my issue is. For me, that I am willing to and will address conflict also comes at this cost. Even if it makes the person I'm talking to uncomfortable, I need to deal with it because I need to know that you understand the problem and that I've given you every possible opportunity to change whatever it is this deal that I'm upset about or to work with me so that we come to a win-win understanding. And so again, when you start looking at the practical parts of it, thinking about what's really important to you and making the commitment. Look, this value is something that I will honor even if it makes me uncomfortable, even if it makes other people uncomfortable. Because what happens, then you start to just kind of go over it time and time again in your mind. You start to really start to play that tape over. And the more you play the tape over in your mind when you violate your values, you make up stories that are perhaps convenient for you so that you can continue in that behavior. So that's kind of what I mean about values, choosing what's really important to you and making a commitment. Look, I'm going to stick to this commitment even when it's uncomfortable. I'll give you one more quick example and then I'll move. Whenever I do anything new, whether it's with a client or in my own business, one of the principles I live by, if I can't see a path for us to be able to do this for at least 6 months, I don't do it at all because I'm not going to spend the energy to ramp up, to figure out how to do it, to turn around and then abandon it in 2 to 3 months. As you can imagine, no matter what kind of system or process or habit you're building, things take time for you to figure out if it's really going to work. It's the same kind of thing, whether we're talking about something that's philosophical or practical. Understanding what you lose when you don't maintain fidelity with those values and commitments and what you gain when you do, and literally making everything line up. If it doesn't line up, it just means that you don't do it. It's not that you're good or bad, it's just that we don't do it.
Very true. Very truly said. Yes. And I appreciate like how grounded that is because fidelity is not about the perfection, but it's all about the coherence. And life feels steadier when beliefs and behaviors stop arguing with each other. So that is something I really believe that. And um, when you talk about this, yeah, please, please.
No, I love that way you said that. When behaviors and beliefs stop arguing with each other. I love that. I think there's a wonderful way to think about it. So you don't have that internal turmoil all the time.
Yeah, exactly, definitely. And I mean, when we're talking about this, also one thing comes in my mind is about the setbacks, right? So, because growth often is not about embracing the discomfort, but it's about choosing, like, to invest again after disappointment, right? So, when someone been burned by the team, a goal, or themselves only, so what helps them rebuild that trust without becoming kind of naive?
A couple of things is I find to be very useful. First, you got to be willing to dissect the situation. I think it's really easy for us to have a reflexive emotional response. I didn't like it, therefore it was terrible. Well, that's a bit simplistic. You've got to be willing to look at what happened, even if it means you realize that there were some flaws on your part. With my assistant, it's when we first started working together, I had to learn how I thought I was the best communicator ever. And I would give her things, Angela, I need this. And she would come back with something. And I'm like, how did you get to that? And I realized message sent wasn't necessarily message received. So sometimes you even got to be willing to look at what you've done to contribute to what you think the problem is. But in terms of the growth part, as you look at it, I think what makes it safer and easier for us to grow is not to label the things as good or bad. They simply are. This didn't work out because of A, B, or C. A is not bad, B is not bad, neither is C. This is simply what happened, and we do or don't want this to happen again. I think first and foremost, being willing to simply look at it and to do so without labeling a situation is absolutely helpful when you're trying to figure out how to, in fact, move forward. Then I think once you label the situation, I think you need to be able to own what you need to move forward. So let's say if you have an employee on your team who had a major mea culpa, they screwed up something. Either you're going to give them a shot to redeem themselves in terms of continuing to treat them like a good contributor to the team, or you need to fire them. But giving them this passive kind of unspoken punishment, that wastes money and resources in terms of your own energy and budget. And it also dehumanizes that other person because I don't know how to get out of purgatory. So one of the things I tell leaders, let's say if you have that person on your team, they've screwed up something. You might go, hey, Myleena, um, I need you to work on this particular project. And I also want you to know that I'm stepping out on faith here because of the last mistake we had. When you go ahead and you say to Myleena, look, the last mistake was really consequential, you go ahead and make it safe for Myleena to say, hey, let's talk about what went wrong. You also make it safe for you to say, because of that, I'm a little hesitant and I'm going to check in with you more frequently. So as opposed to giving you the 6 weeks to get it done, I'd like us to connect every week just to make sure there are no problems. It's not that I want to micromanage you, but I'm also trying to get my bearings back together. And we're going to have to work together to get to a place where our confidence in one another is back to where it needs to be so that we trust each other to do whatever solo work that needs to be done. But you can't explain what you need if you're not willing to look at it and frankly not label the thing as just as blanket failure or whatever negative label you want to give to it. Label it, own it, and then communicate what you need to get past it so that again, Myleena knows what to expect. Hey, look, Abhi is going to check in with me every week about this. I may or may not like it, but I know what he's going to do.
Mm.
And by the same token, um, I've made it clear as the leader, look, this is what I need. I'm not punishing you, but I'm working on getting back to a place where I can trust you. It's things like that in terms of setting back. Often we ignore those kinds of uncomfortable conversations because they're uncomfortable. Think about it. For you to tell me, hey, I'm going to check in with you every week because that last screw up made me uncomfortable. And because this is a budgetary issue, because the timeline is critical, because of who we are partnering with on this project, we can't absorb another mistake like that. When you make it clear, even though it might make me uncomfortable, I know what the stakes are. And you're also telling me that you're building in a buffer just in case things go left again so that we could catch it. I think that's good business. It's good relationship building. It's also uncomfortable.
That's a great part of it. Yeah. And so suppose someone who is listening right now who feels stuck professionally or personally also, then what will be the one uncomfortable truth they might gently ask themselves if they want real movement again?
Ask themselves, are they building their habits and routines in a
Okay.
way that contradict what they say is the thing that they value or what's important to them? It doesn't matter what other people think. It has to be what they know inherently about themselves. Let me give you an example. I used to run every day, like 4 or 5 miles a day. But in the evenings, I would go to my favorite restaurant and I would get ice cream and extra salty French fries. And I would dip the ice cream in the French. It was fantastic. I mean, don't knock it until you try it. The sweet and the salty were doing something for me. And then one day I'm in my car, I'm enjoying my sweet treats, and I kind of had this epiphany. You claim you're getting up early in the morning so that you can be healthy, that you're running these 5 miles. But eating this treat every day undermines that healthy goal. Is your goal to be thin so that you look a certain way to other people? Or is it really about being healthy, which no one may be able to see? And I think in terms of how we as people operate, we need to be honest with ourselves about what our habits are versus what we say our values are and look for contradictions. Yeah, you're running every day, but you're really more concerned about how you look in your jeans, not about your cholesterol, because this ice cream and potato, French fries every day doesn't really help your cause. And I think for a lot of us, that kind of fidelity is something that we get away from. What matters to you, and are you contradicting yourself?
Exactly. I totally agree. Amazing. So Mylena, like for the listeners who want to explore about your work, your coaching, or the leadership drives, where's the best place to for them to find you?
My name is the easiest spot. MyleenaSutton.com is my website. And it will take you to all of the things, the podcast, the coaching, the consulting. You can find all of that at MyleenaSutton.com.
Amazing. So, dear listeners, what I'll do is I'll put all the links and the details into the show notes for easy reference. And thank you so much for joining us on Mind Meets Machine. And if this conversation has resonated with you, then take a moment to notice where alignment or avoidance is shaping your life right now. Real change rarely starts loudly, but it always starts honestly. So, until next time, this is your host, Awake. Stay aware. Thank you so much.
Indeed. Thank you so much. I've enjoyed it.